It says it's live. Are we really live? Converted man here. I've got Southern Man with me.
Hello.
Oh, God! I forgot to put the pause button on the outside shot. I knew I'd forget to do something. Welcome to the Hangout. This is Southern Man. Say hello, Southern Man.
Hello.
He is not. He's got three other brothers: Northern, Western, and the other one.
We don't talk about him. We don't
We
talk
don't
about
talk
him.
about that one. Yeah, one of them. His sisters got crushed by houses. I don't know. Okay, so Southern Man's a theist, and we're gonna be talking about all that sort of cool stuff. Um, Start with a real quick. Hi, how you doing?
Good. Good. How you doing?
Good.
Good. I appreciate you making the time here and kind of following up from our side YouTube chat and yeah, just thought it'd be interesting if we connected and kind of bounce some stuff off each other and appreciate it.
Yeah, I thank you for your time and energy and willingness to do this. It's great that people can come and talk about beliefs and not have to eat each other over it. We'll eat ideas but not each other.
Agreed. Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. So, can you tell most and or all, like, well, I got a couple of random theists that sometimes watch my stuff, but most of my guys and gals and robots out there are skeptical or atheists. So how did you find your faith? Were you born into it? Did you have some sort of thing that happened? How did you become a Christian?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, pretty at least in the American sense of things. I mean, fairly traditional Christian upbringing. Um, both my parents were Christian, so and that alone can lead into some discussion and questions and whatnot. But um, yeah, I would say I don't even know. I can't tell you like the exact day or exact year, um, but there's just kind of a sense. And in our side chat, we had talked a lot about evidence, and you had talked about testability and some of those things I want to get into with you today. Um, but I've seen the way it's worked in people's lives. I've seen the way it's worked in my life. And I'll even say from the onset, which maybe some or possibly even a lot of Christians wouldn't say, is that it's all I always am saying. I would always would say that logically it's possible that I'm wrong, um, but like everyone else, I've got a belief. I know, you'll kind of state yours or maybe your lack thereof of what you see, but um, yeah, and I've read up on it since. I mean, since growing up, I went to church and then haven't been to church in a long time, actually,
Hmm.
very long time, but have I read up on the subject. Um, I've tried to. One thing I've started trying to do more recently is um, made a goal to investigate some of the other religions and things out there, and look for either contradictions or lack thereof of contradictions. But there,
Okay.
I don't know that there's one reason in particular. There's kind of a
So
multitude of things. Yeah.
how long would you say you've been a Christian for, approximately? You don't have to say
Um,
your age. If you don't want to say, it's fine.
yeah,
Don't
I'd
wanna-
I'd say 20 plus years.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and I'll just I'm a grown
Just
man.
leave
I
it
can say
there.
that.
Yeah, right. You're at least 21.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll leave it at that,
exactly,
right? Well, I
exactly.
was I was a Christian from the age of 8 till I was 32, and 39 now. So whatever the math is on that is however long I've been a skeptic. I guess you
Right.
could say before the age of 8, I didn't have any. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to say. What do you believe
Sure.
when you're that young, right?
Right.
But
Right.
I also had the Christian kind of growing up thing where we went to church, and it was just kind of. I think it was just kind of a given that this was a thing that was there, and it wasn't like I don't think we ever said, this is real and true or anything like that. It's just, it was automatically assumed. And then, like, at the age of 8, I was like, yeah, I want a Bible for Christmas, so I'm going to be a Christian. And I was like, oh, yay, and all this, like,
Right.
kind of like really good. But then in my teenage years, I, took it to heart and I really wanted to make it mine. And so I, really, that's when I think I really started being like a Christian. And then as an adult, I was like, I'm going to even do this even more, seriously. Hey, Paul the Skeptic. This is about philosophy with Southern Man. And we're going to talk about God and stuff. So if you have questions for him, you can ask them in the chat. And we'll eventually answer them after I finish asking him and all that stuff. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, then I looked into the history of the faith, and I found there was like no evidence, and basically became a skeptic because of that. So that's my Christianity and subsequent deconversion in a nutshell. I've talked about that before, other places, a longer, more uh, detailed, and or just longer way. uh,
Yeah, sure, sure.
and so yeah, let's see. I was going to ask. The first thing was, how. Oh, what system do we use to decide if something is outside our mind? So, what I mean by that is there's a lot of things that are just in our brain, just in our mind, that we come up with and imagine and pretend, and that we tell each other about. So, one thing that's an object of the mind would be numbers, letters, musical notes, words, and universals. So, the number one exists in your brain and in my brain, but it doesn't. We can write it down. We can use the keyboard to type it, but it's not a thing that's out here with the rest of us, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it's an abstraction. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an abstract object, right? So it doesn't exist in out here. It exists in our brain and only in our brain. And if humans weren't around, well, if something else was around to think about it, then they would think about it, but it wouldn't be here. Okay. So the universal is kind of hard to convey, but if I say the word house, you to try to picture that in your head, and some people don't, visually see things in their heads, but however you want to picture a house, you didn't picture house, you pictured a particular type of house. So you can't ever visualize house because it's a universal. So only particular houses exist. A universal house doesn't. But we still understand house. We know what that means. So,
Right.
car, cat, human, any things like this are all universal. So when I say, picture triangle, well, you just probably just did. I can't read your mind, but when I said triangle, you probably thought of something, right? So, well,
Right.
what did you see in your head? Well, it was a triangle, but it's a particular type of triangle. It's not a universal because we can't visualize the universal of triangle because it's not that sort of thing. So universals only exist in our brain and not out here with everything else. They're abstract objects of thought. Now, some people disagree with any of that, and if you do, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But hopefully, I want to kind of get the distinction from my point across, that there are concepts that exist in our brain or in our mind only, and then things that are not just there. They're out here with everything else. So,
Yeah, like a tangible object. I mean, I would say, for the most part, I agree with everything you've said. I'd have to think about it a little bit more. For instance, if there was no mind to think of the number one, if there was no mind to think of a triangle, does a triangle or does the number one exist? I'd say I'm not ready to say that the answer is no. I don't know
yeah,
if that's what
no,
you're saying.
that's
I mean,
perfectly understandable because a lot of people have a problem with that. That the particular would still exist. there's triangles regardless whether there's minds to conceive of them or not. But
Right.
the universal concept wouldn't be without a mind to actualize it, if that. At least from my
Yeah.
point of view. Now,
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
people have.
I think I could agree with that. At least my understanding of what you're saying right now. Yeah. I mean, you're just, all you've done there is basically just in long form, kind of just discuss what it is to have to abstractly think about something. So yeah, if there's no mind to think about it,
Right.
true, and there's no thinking of that thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
Reality would continue on presumably without us to, did before us, and it will do it without us, and
Right.
so it's like the painting on my wall exists whether I'm here to observe it or not, and all that. But even the word painting, well, that was a universal. So, well, what's the painting? And
Right.
then we get into that whole. I mean, we could be there for hours trying to figure out what a painting
Yeah.
is.
Right. Right. Right.
If I put a frame around a wall that has been painted, and then I paint inside the frame, is that a painting? Well, I mean,
Right.
at
Right.
any rate,
Yeah. You
the
go down the
question.
rabbit hole too far.
So all of that was a preface to the question of how do we determine what's outside of our mind rather than just an object in our brain. What system are we going to utilize that we can all come to an agreement upon that will differentiate the difference between something that is only in my brain as an abstract object and only potentially in your brain as an abstract object, or in multiple people's brains as an abstract object, versus a thing that's really out here that we can all
Observe.
observe in some
Yeah.
meaningful way, test it, tangible. And so what's the system going to be to best decide what is, for lack of better words, real and what is imaginary?
Right. Well, I mean, it's if I was given a response to it, I would say there probably never would be a single one, and there's some, and so that presents some challenges. And this is after I've kind of seen some of your videos and that discussion you had with Matt Slick. Some of the things you said, not everything, but I will just tell you, and you've kind of started it here. It's kind of like what it made me think about was, man, I would concede, and again, I'll say logically, and when I say logically, kind of like I said at the beginning, around my Christianity, like logically, there's nothing perhaps precluding it from being wrong. It's kind of like, are we having this discussion right now?
Yes.
There will always be, the point zero. Let's call it a trillion zeros, and then a 1%. Like, we're not having this conversation. Like, one of us is just dreaming that we're having this conversation and imagining the responses.
Yeah, the Red King's
and
dream, right?
Yeah, and if well, no, I know, because I can feel my keyboard, or I can feel the phone in my hand. I know it's real, man. And it's like, well, but if it was a dream that was supposed to feel like that, that's what it would feel like. It feels like. So we can go down that path.
But that
I'm not.
Yeah, that's what's called a. Now I'm not going to pronounce it right, but that's okay. Hard solipsism,
Right.
however you want to say that word. I don't know.
Right.
I can't say words. But I always just go, reality is real, and we can test it. So we don't
Right.
need to go down that route, because we've already presumably agreed to a priori beliefs like that I exist, you exist, and reality exists. And then,
Right.
okay, well, if I pick up a piece of dirt, and what have I picked up? Well, let's call this dirt, and we go from there. But then we get into, well, what made this? And then there's this difference of science will figure that out, which is what I'm comfortable with. And then theology says, well, we've got the answer, and here's the answer. A thing called God made all of this, and that thing that we call God is so beyond us that we can't really describe it, but we're going to try anyways.
Right. Yeah. Well, and yeah, it's the thing that struck me, deconverted man, about some of your comments. And again, I mean, I would say, uh, logically, most, maybe not all. I can't think of a specific one per se, but most of them, I'd hear your opinion or your thoughts, and I'd say, oh, okay, I mean, the guy's not crazy. Okay, I'm like, but at the same
Well,
time, yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't know. I probably don't know well enough, right? I would have to do some testing, like you say. But what I noticed was, and that's what struck me about, kind of that God experience, where at first, and I will say you did eventually, and maybe you weren't even trying to kind of avoid it at first. I mean, but I kind of posed that question, what if you had this experience? And to me at first, you kind of somewhat danced around it. I mean, you basically answered some of my questions with questions, but you did eventually start going there. And I'll acknowledge for, the video or whoever's, in the room, that he, deconverted man, has made the subsequent video where he's explored it. So I don't know everything you've said there, but I guess it was, that's what when I heard that, when we kind of were chatting there, and when I was listening to your discussion with Matt Slick, that I just started having some questions that I was just curious. And again, some of this for me is just trying to learn, if you don't want to say worldview, I'll just say I know people who, generally speaking, tend to kind of think like you, or they'll have the same rebuttals as you. And so I was just trying to better understand it. Like, and as the example. So I had
right.
the God
I mean,
experience.
basically, the answer to the question of how are we going to decide if something is real or just in our brain,
Right.
or well, both, I guess you could say in that sense, is the essence of our previous interactions, where you would ask me, well, what if you had this experience, whatever that might be? Maybe it's a God experience, maybe
Yeah.
aliens kidnap me, maybe I open the door and it's in the entire universe is outside my front door somehow, whatever the weird experience is. And
Right. Right. Right.
now I don't know until I'm there how I would really respond, but hypothetically, I would try to remember to gather data. I would try,
Right.
hopefully, to somehow record what's happening and document
Right.
it as best as I could. And
Right.
then when the experience was over, I would try to see if any of that was testable or tangible to anybody besides myself. If it was, then we have something to go on. If not, then it probably just happened in my brain. It might have been a dream, might have been a hallucination, it might have been a lot of things, and I just go, well, that was a thing that happened, and I can't
So
know more about it than what I know.
then what you know. So that brings me to the I guess I didn't have a ton of questions for you today.
No,
I'll be
that's all
honest.
right. No.
But this was one of the main ones. So, and I didn't have a chance to further go back and forth with you on it. I could acknowledge that. Now, the difference between me and you is, and again, I'll say logically, like, let's just say we're sitting, okay, we're talking right now. I'm sitting in
Right.
my apartment. If, let's just say hypothetically right now, and I've got, by the way, as you can see, my camera is turned off, but let's just say right now, and let's stipulate for the hypothetical, I think in Matt Slick's thing, he and his buddy, they saw this kind of thing that turned into like a glowing golden cross, okay,
Right.
and kind of hovered in the room. I mean, that's not like a light bouncing off a wall that's in the
Yeah.
shape of a cross, so let's just say hypothetically that happened to me right now, and just whatever, let's say 3 feet from me there's a clear as day, it's
Right.
three-dimensional
Right.
looking golden cross. I'm not sure about you, but for me, I would say I'm certain this is happening. I would acknowledge, like, if I was telling people about this, I would say, hey, there's always, but only logically, in the sense that it's theoretically possible. I wouldn't believe it, but I would say, there's the point zero a billion zeros 1% chance that somehow I imagined it. Why I imagined that, and somehow I have to trust that my TV that I see is not also a hallucinate.
Yeah. Right.
I would acknowledge that. Like some people won't even acknowledge that. Like some
Right.
Christians or theists,
Well,
they
no,
won't do that.
you experienced something. The question is if it was a natural phenomenon or something that beyond the mundane, you know.
Well, right. And so there's two. That's part of it, but also you still kind of originally were focused a little bit like it may be in my mind, and so my hypothetical to you would be: let's say you had you were with a couple of people that you really trusted, and then let's say you were with maybe two or three random people. I don't know what the scenario would be like, a bus stop, or you're in a bank or something like that,
Yeah.
where okay, so it's you've got you. I mean, you trust you. You certainly would trust these people, and then you've got kind of just random people. You got a kind of an old guy. You got this lady who's in her 50s. You got this kid who's in his
Right,
20s.
right.
Whatever. And then let's just say, you and your friends were kind of having this discussion. Somehow you're in line at the bank, as this example goes, and then you just say, you know, yeah, I don't think there's a God. There's no God. And they say that. And then someone says, oh, someone overhears you in the front of the line and says, no, I think there is. And I think you guys are wrong. And maybe you're just kind of chit chatting as the line's moving along.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, well, if there's a God, I want to see a golden glowing cross hover brightly in the room.
Right.
My watch says 12:01. When it strikes 12:02 and everybody looks and you kind of make a big deal. So everybody in the bank's looking, and at 12:02, it happens.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you're kind of debriefing, right? I mean, let's say it lasts for 10-15 seconds, so it's not just a split second thing. Now you've seen it, and you
Mm-hmm.
could say you had a hallucination, but then
Right.
let's say that you're like, hey guys, did you see that? And they said,
Right.
No, I did see it. And then all the bank
Yeah.
people, they were like, yeah, we saw that.
Right.
You'd have to, I mean, you wouldn't have to logically, but it'd be kind of insane to me if you'd say, well, that we could have all just hallucinated.
Well, let's check the bank video footage
Right.
before we do anything else. If it's not recorded by the cameras, then we might have all hallucinated and or dreamed it and or any other possible thing. Why wouldn't the camera pick it up? That would be a huge question. And so because we could invent all these scenarios. So without being, the question is not how many people experienced X, Y, or Z, because people have claimed and do seem to experience all sorts of different phenomenon. There's thousands upon thousands of different anecdotal stories, but those aren't interesting because there's no documentation to show that they're anything more than just stories. So if we went to India, there's 1,000 different gurus, and the Indians will claim that their guru of choice can levitate, heal people, whatever. I'll just use the levitate one because that's the easiest one to deconstruct.
Sure.
There was even a story I'd read where a guy went and he sat there and he watched and he waited for the guru to levitate. Nothing happened, but everyone else around him was saying, "Oh yeah, he levitated, yay!" And they're all clapping. It's like, what?
Yeah.
He didn't budge. He didn't do anything. But they had convinced themselves that he did. And of course, there's other instances where it looks like the guru is levitating, but for whatever weird, odd reason, we can't put him in a controlled environment. He can only do it when nobody is allowed to test him. So it's probably a magic trick. But
I would agree. But the difference with my scenario,
they still saw it. So
but not everybody saw it, and two, it's a little different scenario in that.
But
you might logically say he's doing that to scam people or people come in.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if something bizarre happens, like there was, I forget what it was in Mexico. This happened ages ago. They all thought that they had seen something in the sky. I don't know if they thought it was an alien or whatever it was they thought, but they all saw, there was thousands of people that saw this thing.
Right.
And there's zero documentation in video format of it. They just all said that they saw it.
Sure.
Well, that's a nice story. What else you got? Why is there never any video, photographic, tangible evidence of these events. And that just makes a big giant red flag to say, okay, we can talk hypothetical until we're blue in the face, but in any given situation, if something happens that's beyond the mundane, and I, for whatever reason, am unable to document it and further investigate it, the end of the story is right then and there. I don't know
Sure.
what happened.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
that's it.
that right there
And
is just
to make conclusions about that
right.
would only lead to potential cognitive bias of, well, I think it was this, I think it was that. Let's look online. Oh, look, all these people agree with me. It must have been that, whatever. If my
Sure.
door to my room opens up on its own right now, didn't happen. Darn it. Uh, well, it was a ghost that did it. Well, I don't know that. It could, was the wind.
Sure.
Well, I don't know that either. I don't know why it opened. I just know it opened, or it looked like it opened. Maybe it really didn't open. And
Right.
if I
Yeah. I
cannot,
mean,
if I
I
can't, if I can't test it, if I can't externally verify it, then there's nothing more to go on.
yeah, and that uh again, I don't think you're crazy for having that point of view. I mean, I don't know you, you don't really know me, so but you sound like an intelligent guy. I mean, maybe you'd say I do. I don't know if you would or not, but reasonable intelligence at least. I can tell you. And so I don't think you're crazy for having that kind of point of view. I mean, you didn't want to call it a worldview, but essentially, what I hear from you is your worldview is what you just said. I mean, it must be testable. I must be able to kind of do this, that, or the other thing
Mm-hmm.
scientifically to believe it. Whereas I would say, yeah, if you want to have that, you certainly can. And again, you're not crazy. There are things I just believe, and we could
Mm-hmm.
spend probably a long time on what does that mean by you believing um, that you couldn't test. I mean, trying to think of just like an off. So um, my sister just had a baby. Okay, that's true. So I just got to meet my nephew fairly recently, and um, if I said, oh, I love my nephew. I mean, I don't know that we could prove that in a certain sense. You might even concede, well, at best, we could just prove that you think you love him. Whereas I would say, scientifically, yes, but just in my soul, I would say, yeah, you can have the test, or you can not have the test that proves it. That doesn't make it not so. I do love my nephew. So now you might not agree with that, but that's kind of that would be one thing that kind of just jumps to mind is that
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be provable to be true.
Well, okay. Let's go with that a bit here. Love is a chemical and electrical thing in our brain. Hopefully, is that okay with you? Or
You mean, do I agree with that?
yeah.
Um, I would agree that those are components, but no, I would not say it is just that. I would say maybe it's just that you can evaluate scientifically.
Okay. All right. That's I guess that's okay. Um, so we could hypothetically devise some sort of test that would show that if you were exposed to pictures of random people and your nephew, in fact, on one of the YouTube Red things I'd watched for a while, mind, oh no, what was it called now? Mind Blow or whatever it was called. But anyways, the guy, Vsauce guy, Michael, whatever his name is. Anyways, he did this whole thing where there's this new technology that's kind of like a better than the lie detector, because that never really worked. But
Sure.
it shows you different images, and your brain just automatically spikes in responses to the certain images. So you can't fool this machine apparently. Although I
Sure.
reserve judgment on that. But at any rate, we could have that, and you could look at pictures, and there'd be a spike. You could test the chemicals in your brain hypothetically and see, okay, yes, has that chemical reaction that we call love when he sees this person or thinks about them. And
Right.
so we could say, yeah, you love them. That's on the technical side. On the interaction socially, we have what's called the social contract, where when we tell each other things, we assume innocence until guilt is proven. So if I tell you I love somebody, you don't really need to doubt that. There's no
Right.
reason to doubt it. If I told you I had dinner yesterday, you're good again. Yeah, okay, whatever. And we just kind of do this with each other all the time. But the
Right.
moment that either of us makes a claim that is outside of the mundane, we start asking for evidence. So if I say I had dinner with the president of the United States last night, and that you're gonna want some proof that that happened.
Right. Agreed.
You might, if you know me well enough, you could just believe me. And if you know, it's like this guy never lies. Okay, yeah, that's cool, man. How was he? Oh, yeah, you know the way he talks on Twitter. Yeah, he doesn't talk like that at all. It's all an act. It's amazing,
Right.
or whatever.
Right. 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 Right.
You
Right.
know, whoa, man, you're blowing my mind. And he's a lizard person. Wait, what? No, just kidding about that. But so we could believe each other, or we could be skeptical of certain claims that we make. And
Right.
that's the social contract. So when we say I love somebody, yeah, okay, yeah, you love them, and we don't need to prove that. We don't need to. Okay, but we know love is real. We know that demonstrably and demonstratably. We can test it. We can verify it. We can tinker with it. People that have had their brains damaged in certain areas cannot feel love. Some can only feel love, and so on and so forth. So we know that it's a thing.
Right.
Then we come to something that is a giant question mark, like there was a glowing golden cross in the middle of the room, and
Yeah. And
now
there's no
what?
evidence.
And there's no
Yeah.
evidence of that. Okay,
Yeah.
that's nice. That probably just happened in your brain, and that's it. Moving on.
Right.
Now, if we had evidence, we could go further, but we don't. And no matter what the story is, that's all I would say is, where's the evidence? And that's why you hear atheists and skeptics always say, there's no evidence for God. Well, that's kind of a shorthand. There's no empirical, testable evidence of God. There's arguments that people present for God. Arguments are not evidence, and all the arguments have logical fallacies. But that's a whole different problem in and of itself. If something happens to you, and you said, well, I would just believe it, but I would challenge that. If Buddha appeared in your room and said, yeah, I'm the real thing, follow Buddhism, would you just convert to Buddhism? Or would it take more than that to do it? Would you, I mean, there's all sorts of,
Yeah. I would not, but I wouldn't deny that I saw the thing that claimed it was Buddha that told me he wasn't, everything else was wrong. I would acknowledge that. I would just say, yeah, that happened. I mean, like if somebody, I wouldn't, I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, I wouldn't deny what I saw. I would look into it further though, for sure. And if he was there and stayed there, I would say things, I would ask questions like, oh, what was wrong about it? What my understanding was this, and, probably try to pepper him with some questions.
Right. So you wouldn't just believe because it happened in that one case. You would want more than that. And so
Correct.
That's what I'm asking for, is more than just this one or two, or even if he came back every day and you're sick of him, at the end of the year, he's like, by the way, I'm never coming back after this. And, sorry, this is it. That's the last day of the year, but you should really convert to Buddhism. You've asked every question under the sun. Maybe you're convinced, maybe you're not, but for whatever reason, you forgot to record any of it. And I still believe in Jesus, even though Buddha appeared to me. It was really weird.
Yeah, I mean, we could go pretty far down this one, but I would say in your hypothetical, let's just say he came to me. Let's say I never record it, okay, just to make it easier. So I never record it, I never have it testable, and he's like, he appears, right after this phone call, a
Right.
hovering Buddha kind of appears in my apartment and says, "Hey, I'm gonna find you, once a day for the next 30 days. You can ask any questions you want. Um, I will arrange it such that you're not able to record me."
Yeah.
And so I will tell you from the day one, initially, I would say, I believe that I saw some spirit thing appear to me and say it. So I wouldn't denounce that. Now, at first, I would certainly say, yeah, I still believe in Jesus, and this is maybe some demon manifesting itself, trying to trick me or something. And then I'd start asking questions that maybe I think are, logical fallacies or issues with Buddhism. Now, I will tell you, if day 1, 2, 3, and let's say up to like we're at day 20, and I've asked some really hard hitting questions and some really difficult, challenging things, and somehow he says, "Oh, great question," and he's answered it this way and that way, I won't say that necessarily I would convert, but I'd be thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just live in oblivion. I mean, I'd be like, man, he's chopping down every tree that I throw in front of him. I mean, this is pretty amazing. I don't think it would be possible, obviously, because I'm a Christian. But in the hypothetical, yeah, I mean, I'd give it its due. I mean, I wouldn't just ignore it.
Yeah.
That's
And
why.
the
So for the bank scenario, I'd ask you two things. One, if it really happened, because again, we can never, by the definition, I mean, there's always the point zero, whatever. If you had to fill in a multiple choice, let me maybe frame it that way. And let's have two scenarios. One is you're with your buddies in that hypothetical I gave you. The other one is you were sitting in the car.
mm,
And let's take the first one. You're there, and then after it happens, no, that would probably lead you into some other questions. Let's just say, for whatever reason, because I was going to say, then you'd say, "Oh, well, they definitely made the object." Let's say immediately after,
uh-huh.
um, I walked into the bank, or some random guy. I'm trying to think how I can do it without you then using that to kind
Uh-huh.
of divert from what I'm getting at. But if you had to answer a multiple choice, oh no, actually, here we'll make it simple. That event happens. You
Uh-huh.
tell me this story. You're
Right.
like, well, hey, actually, that did happen. And I'd say, okay, fill in the multiple choice. You got four options. It was a mass hallucination by everybody in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
It was, as generally understood, God showing you guys a sign,
Mm-hmm.
or it was you guys all thought you saw something, but you saw it was really some weird light refraction. Now you
Mm-hmm.
might say, well, I don't have to choose between those three, but if I asked you, because everything to me is really about odds, because again, there's always the
Yeah.
odds that we're not even having this conversation. So if you had to
Yeah.
select one, which would
I,
you select?
well, I couldn't because my adherence to logic. I would say it's an excluded middle. The questions are framed in a way that I cannot answer them honestly, because I don't know what happened. That's the
No, no,
real
no, no.
answer.
The multiple choice doesn't say which are you absolutely certain of. The multiple choice says
Doesn't
you
matter.
you have to bet. You have to say which
No,
one you think is most
I.
likely. Well, no, but I'm
But I
framing it
can't.
that
I
way.
can't. I can't even give a percentile because that's not how I view. I don't do that. Like I don't say like, well, I exist. That's 100% for the a priori beliefs.
Right.
Other brains other than my own exist. That's 99.9. I don't do that. I don't quantify things in that way because there's no coherent system that I'm aware of that would allow me to quantify how much certainty I would put into any given thing. I assume reality is real and that it's testable, and I go from
Right.
there.
Sure.
I don't know if something odd that was not mundane, and there's been things in my past I could talk about, but whatever that happened. I could not say anything more than I think that it happened. Did it really happen? Is there any external evidence of it? Not just people saying that it happened.
I know, but you'd have to chalk, or I guess you wouldn't have to. But you again, then if you don't, you're the guy who sees this thing
You
and
know,
then just won't answer it. What
it
would you say? You're talking to your buddies and you're like, yeah, they're like, dude, I saw that. I mean, I don't know
yeah.
what it was, but I
We
definitely saw it. What
we
would you say?
I'd say, well, that was the thing that happened. I don't know what else to think of it.
Okay, well, and I mean, would it not lead you again?
It
It's
it it would
once it just
lead
happened,
it
but
would
two, for the
lead.
person to say, "Hey, if there's a God as we generally
Yeah,
understand it, in a minute from now, at the stroke
right.
of 12:02, do this thing," and then it does it. I mean, that's what when I was watching your video
Yeah,
discussion.
it'd be great if that could happen, but it's never happened.
Well, yeah, but
That's,
I'm asking you if it happened, the
if
hypothetical.
it
If
happened,
it, yeah,
can I repeat it? Can I
uh,
document it? Is it a one time
let's say
event? I
let's
mean,
say you could repeat it, but you
well,
couldn't document it
if
because
okay,
you're
if
one
I
thing
can
you're not.
repeat it, then I can document it because that the two are mutually exclusive. If I can repeat the experiment, then I can show other people, and that's documentation.
Well, no.
I can.
Let me because you're looking for that easiest. I want to make it a little bit more challenging for you. That event happens in, you know, uh, let's say it would be difficult. Like you're talking, I believe
Mm.
you, but I will say if that really happened, I think deep down, in the back of your mind, you may not want to talk about it.
That's
You
called
you
mind reading.
you would think. Now I don't know that. I don't know that, but I think you'd think about it. And now let's just say you couldn't repeat it, right? And then months go by, and you're just every once in a while you think about that, and you go, "Oh, that thing happened. I don't know what that is, but that thing happened." And but still, maybe in the back of your mind, there's maybe God is real, maybe not. Let's just take the best case for you, I guess, and you just think it's some unexplained thing, and then you're kind of laying there one night, and you just go, if that was real, God, if you're out there, if that was real,
Mm-hmm.
do that same thing in my room right now, and let's make it where again you can't record it. So you could document yourself, and you could take little notes that it happened, but
Yeah,
you're waiting.
I'll kind of
What
cut
would
you
you,
off. I'll kind of
yeah?
cut you off a little bit
What would you say?
because no matter if I cannot externally verify it, then it's in my brain as best as I know, and it's
Well,
always
let's say you had
that's it.
another buddy with you. Let's say you had another buddy
It
with you.
doesn't if it's not externally verifiable, that means it can be verified by not just a person, but or a group, but by empirical methodology. We can record it. We
Sure.
can test it. If
Yeah.
not, that's it. That's the end of it. It's just
Well,
in my
that would
in
assume
that
even in your thing, it would assume that it's kind of
it,
I would assume you're trying to use the natural scientific methods
right. And
to
there,
to
okay,
measure what
that
presumably
there we
is
go.
supernatural,
Ah,
right?
okay. Let's go into that a bit, okay? Because
Yeah.
the hypothetical stuff is kind of to me. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of played. Uh, if the analogy of the door opening, and we want to say, well, we know that there's natural things that can make a door open.
Right.
We don't know what of those things did it, but we know that those things could do it. It could be the wind, it could be the hinges, it could be a gravitational shift, it could be, I don't know,
The
whatever.
house settling. Yeah,
The house
settling. Right.
settling. Okay. What methodology could I possibly hope to use to show that the supernatural is even a thing in the first place?
What methodology could you use to um you mean just specific to the door opening and closing, or just anything in general?
Just yeah, anything, but let's just stick with that Pacific. How would I mean, it could be, but yeah, it applied to anything. How would you or anybody, how would we, humanity, hope to ever establish that the supernatural, whatever that is even a thing other than an object in our mind?
Yeah, because I mean, thinking about your question, the first thing that jumped to my mind would be um, eyewitness accounts.
Which is
To,
discounted.
to you, right? To you, discounted. Yes, I wouldn't say that it's not meaningful though. And again, I would acknowledge. I mean, I'll again, I've kind of said this at the jump. It's not going to prove, quote unquote, anything, but and maybe it's just that's fine too, man. People have different philosophical views. If I had let's say my father, who I trust more than anything, maybe there's a few of my friends who just, I bet my life on. I mean, and if it came down to those terms, and somehow my father was with three of my buddies and they came back and they saw something. Now, at first, let's say they saw something what we would call supernatural. At first I would be skeptical. I mean, certainly I would say, you guys are putting me on or something. You'd have to know my dad's really not like that. So I'd be less skeptical than normal, certainly because it's my dad and that's his personality. But there'd be like maybe I'd say, well, there's a 2% chance they're just playing some gag on me. Now, if I framed it such, like if I said, if somehow it was my life was dependent on it, or something extreme where I would just know, hey, if you guys are lying, this bad thing's going to happen. So they're at least not going to do what they think is lying. I would say, well, it's either a mass hallucination, like you said, and I would even say that's possible.
Well,
I would believe them. I personally could eventually,
yeah.
I could believe them.
Here's the thing: believing that something happened in that person's brain.
Yeah,
that I would agree with. Yeah, something happened in your brain.
Multiple people's brains in that scenario.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Did it happen out here with the rest of us? That is the question. And when it comes to the paranormal or the supernatural or things of this nature, when everything else that you can come up with is empirically verifiable, that means you can see it in some way, shape, or form, not just with the naked eye, but infrared or ultraviolet or heat or whatever, radiation. Okay, even black holes we can see by the effects that they have or whatever. Okay,
right.
If it's not verifiable in that direct sense, then it's testable in some way. Everything is. But when it comes to this thing that we call supernatural, that's off limits. That's kind of weird. That makes it seem more like an object of the mind than a thing that's not an object in the mind.
It's weird for sure. I mean, even by definition, it's super. It's not natural. It's like supernatural. In another word, it's almost like it's weird natural.
Okay.
So it's like you're using an infrared, whatever the gun would be, or whatever the testing device is, and you're sticking it in a glass of water trying to get the Fahrenheit. It's like, dude, you're not using the right thing. I mean,
right. Well, now that's okay. I don't know if you. I'm trying to see if you can see the thing. Can you see my blank screen right now? You might have, if you've seen this video before, it won't work. But we're going to talk about personal account and eyewitness.
Sure.
Okay.
I can see a blank screen.
Okay,
yes.
I'm going to play this. I have it muted. Hopefully it will work. Do you see that says awareness test?
Yes.
Okay, so
it's
there's
small on my cell phone, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. How many passes does the team in white make? Is it's going to ask you. So watch the team in white and how many times they pass the ball to each other. Mm-hmm. And it's lagging.
Okay.
It's lagging. Come on. Oh, okay. So that's where it stopped. Did you see the moonwalking bear?
No.
Okay.
Because I was only looking at the trying to look at the guys in white.
So there was a move. So if we slow it down, we play it again, you'll watch, and at some point there will be a bear. Here he is, right there. That black, right behind that gal.
Yeah. Okay. I wouldn't even necessarily know that's a bear.
There he is, dancing. Okay. And there he goes. He goes moonwalking off. Okay, and there's better videos than this one. Okay.
Sure.
In a nutshell, now that video will never work if you it only works once. Okay. That's kind of how it is to eyewitness something. You're paying attention to the ball being passed, and the bear, you didn't even see the bear.
Right.
There's been ones where they've done this, and you can watch videos of it. They come up to the counter, they start filling out a form, and then they hide behind the counter to get something, and then a different person pops up. They've done it from male to female, from black to white. It doesn't matter. The person,
I've seen those before.
They usually don't even notice. Sometimes they do, but like they go, okay, all right.
Yeah.
And then there was a police training documentary I saw where they had the fake hostage thing, and they said, okay, describe the person, and everybody's desperately trying to write down what they saw, and nobody agreed with each other. None of their things agreed with each other. And it's like, that's the point, is it's really hard in a stressful situation to remember what happened. And that we could see an event and that's it. That's all we're going on.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess to me, I'd say kind of where... Yeah, no worries. Sorry, just had to decline that call. I'd say I can acknowledge that. I mean, again, I would agree. I guess it depends on how you frame it. Like, see, I would have framed it more if we showed this video to 100 people and said, hey, and 100 people came out and said, hey, we saw a bunch of guys passing a ball around.
Yeah, that's usually that they've done that, and it's usually that people do only see what they're told to see. They don't see the bear or whatever they have in the background.
Sure, but I guess my point is, if the 100 people see, you're making the super, or I don't even know that you are, but like, let's say that's the claim. If 100 people came out and said, hey, I saw this thing, and you go, what's that thing? And they go, hey, I saw some guys passing the ball around. Again, logically, I would say it's possible that they hallucinated or whatever, but I would say if they were all of different ilks, and if I really kind of grilled them, I'd say, you know what? I just believe that they saw that.
Yeah, but I think you're missing the point. Is you watched the video, you didn't see the bear. That's the point. Is we see the thing that we want to see. We don't see the other thing. We don't notice these things. There's other.
But I didn't see something that didn't happen, though.
Right. That's
okay.
That's good. So, I mean, because you're right, and we have these things, and there's certain psychological phenomenon that are true for a wide percentage of people. Again, this is another experiment that won't work if you've heard the experiment before. So I'm going to try it, and if you've heard the experiment, go ahead and stop me because it won't work otherwise. And then people in chat can also participate if they want. Okay. Spell out the word milk 3 times, and then I'm going to ask you a question after that.
Okay. M-I-L-K. M-I-L-K. M-I-L-K.
What do baby cows drink?
Milk?
No, water.
I don't know.
They drink water. Well, baby cows drink milk. I said it wrong. But adult cows drink milk. Okay, I screwed that up. Okay. Forget about that.
I knew there was... Yeah, no I knew, by the way,
I'm sorry.
Asked, so I was like, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing because I haven't done this in a while. Well, everyone in chat, ignore that I did that. It's adult cow. Damn it. Okay, I'm okay now. Just because I screwed it up, it's okay. I was technically right in my brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, when you said it, it's funny because I was thinking of an adult cow.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was thinking of that because I was like, well, somehow
you screwed this up. Yeah, you were right, and I was whatever.
Yeah. No worries.
The other one is okay. It was like, what is it? Count backwards from 5, and then I'm gonna ask you to 2 things, and then I'm going to predict what you thought of. This one you have to be honest because you could lie about it. So we'll see if it works. Okay, so count backwards from 5.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Name a color and a tool, or think of a color and a tool in your head.
Okay.
Okay, was it red hammer?
It was blue hammer.
Pretty close. Okay. So that, again, there's a percentage of that for whatever reason that works like on 90 some odd crazy amount of people. Why? Because because it does. The brain.
Sure.
There's certain patterns that our brains adhere to. So the skeptical, if you want, the skeptical way of scrutinizing our world is essentially, you could say, well, it's a scientific method. And I say, yeah. And it's not that I'm saying that's the only way, it's the best way. When something weird happens to us, and it can, because our brains can do amazing things, and they do these amazing things for lots of different reasons. And the reason I think that the supernatural, quote unquote, is limited is because our brains only do these amazing things for short periods of time. That the event is a one time or a one time only deal because your brain did that once. There's this thing called the God helmet that they've developed that sends out magnetic waves. You put it on somebody's head, and they will say, I'm experiencing God. And this works to, like, even people that have never experienced God can feel something.
Sure. Okay.
But other people, it does nothing on them. And they've never experienced God. And this makes sense from an evolutionary perspective because some brains can do this thing and some brains can't. And the magnets somehow mess with our brains. So the question would be, if that person that said, I'm experiencing God right now listening to this nice music, and then you put the thing on them and go, well, yeah, now I experience God again with this thing on, is how in the world could we ever hope to know, outside of a laboratory experiment, if that guy's just walking along the road and he's experiencing God, that there's not magnetic fluctuations happening that are making him experience God, versus it's actually God. We have a natural possibility, and then we have one that we haven't even shown is a possibility, which brings me back to the question of how can we ever demonstrate or hope to demonstrate that the supernatural is even a thing in the first place?
Yeah, and then I guess again we kind of come back to, as I said at the beginning, I don't know by the definition you want to use, which is not necessarily a crazy definition. It's just not possible. It's just not possible, because I would agree. The guy walking on the street, I would say, if like say some guy who's walking on the street and he goes, "Hey man, I'm experiencing God," I would say, if I just kept walking past him and didn't talk to him, I'd be like, that's possible. Necessarily believe him just from him saying that, but again, that's not an extraordinary claim. And two, I didn't investigate it. And the ones I was kind of giving you were, maybe people have seen something, or and there's atheists who've like converted where they've had similar experiences, where they claim to have seen something. I don't know if they have or not, but they claim it. That would be a little different, because the guy saying, "Oh, I'm kind of just feeling God's presence on me." I would still say it's possible, but I would say, "Nah, I don't know." Whether if people said, "Hey, we saw this object," I mean, let's just, like my hypothetical, that would raise a lot more questions. I mean, where I would, in the sense of, I would say, man, that would be hard for them to just kind of subjectively think that. It's hard to just. You could, a feeling, you might say, okay, if someone said, "Hey, I was with a group of 4 people and we saw this golden glowing cross." Again, I'm not saying that they would be telling the truth.
Well, Joseph Smith was able to get Oliver Cowdery to agree with his little story pretty easily.
But yeah, right. I mean, there's people who, again, there's people who lie.
Look at the insanity of Scientology. Here's a book that the guy said, "I'm going to make a religion," and he did. He did. And it's 2 books. Neither of them are anything at all. They're like they're badly written science fiction. And people have made this into a religion, and they sincerely believe it. And they even have this little test thing that they do where you hold this tube and then you say stuff and the little needle goes back and forth. And people have acquired this and taken it apart and looked at how it works and shown that it doesn't do
It's
anything. It's bunk.
BS. Yeah. Oh,
And
we agree on that. Yeah.
for a long time, James Randi was out there with his $1 million offer of anybody could come and prove any sort of supernatural thing, any sort of weird thing that they could do, like, mind reading or psychics or,
Yep.
all this. And nobody did it. And they don't do it anymore, but JRIF doesn't do that anymore. Other foundations are still out there that are offering huge cash prizes for this, and nobody's ever claimed it, but yet they'll gladly take your, $20, $100 on the phone for, or every now and then I drive by this psychic person's house. That's a business and a house, and when it was really stormy and there was a tree fell in the front of their yard, I'm like, did they see that coming? It's like,
I agree. And look, I'm not saying there's not charlatans or liars out there, and for sure.
Our brain can produce amazing things that we experience, and we can either self-generate that or it might be externally generated. There's been reports on that there's a trace amounts of cocaine on money, and you can look into that. It's kind of interesting. So hypothetically, if I handled enough money and it had enough cocaine on it, and I didn't wash my hands after handling it, which you should always wash your hands before you eat, and I ate something, I potentially have just ingested cocaine, which is going to affect my brain.
Right.
So if all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I just saw this thing, and in that moment I did see it because my brain said that I saw it, but actually it was the cocaine that I had no idea that I just ingested. And I'm not going to think about the fact that I ate something and that before I ate something I was touching money and that money could have cocaine on it. I'm not going to think in that way because we don't think like that unless we train ourselves to be doubters, to be okay with saying, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. You got me. I have no idea how that happened. I don't even know if it did happen. That's okay. We have to be comfortable with the unknown.
Yeah, I would agree. The only thing, the difference, again, from like 10,000 feet is there will be things where it depends on your definition of no. And so I somewhat agree with you. I somewhat don't. If you asked about the Buddha thing, Buddha appears in my room. Just colloquially, just kind of general common language, just talking to people, in my mind, I would say I effectively know. Now, again, I just don't operate when I speak normally about the 0.00 a billion zeros and the 1% that this other crazy thing. I mean, because I too can come up with a million different little explanations that are possible, but I'd just say, yeah, I'd still say, no, that happened. And I wouldn't say, like, I could pass a lie detector, even knowing that there's theoretical possibilities for something. I still could personally pass a lie detector and say, no, I saw him. I did.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you think that this sort of personal experience of X, Y, and Z is something that can only is that something that we can extend outwards to all things? Or is it that, like I've been saying, the scientific methodology, this more skeptical methodology, that one we know works and we can extend it outward? Whereas the personal thing, if we just did that for everything, would that really work for everything, or would it only work for some things?
And when you say the personal thing, clarify that.
That you've had this any untestable thing that if we, well, I guess we do that, don't we? Because we have all these religions out there. So I suppose we are seeing the results of people experimenting with, let's see what happens when we just assume that this is real.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be like, again, I was trying to think of something that's kind of uh, somewhat immeasurable. Like if you met someone, and again, you could poke holes in it because I could poke holes in it too. But if you just met someone, you said, "Hey, they're a nice person," right? Then we have to define our terms. Well, what does it mean if someone's nice? And then you got to say, well, so every time you meet someone that you really think's nice, like, what if they're secretly a crazy serial killer and you
Right.
just
We're
don't
getting
know?
into the social
Yeah,
contract again.
yeah, we
Right.
start getting into that. But I mean, sometimes I can just tell you, again, uh, absent the point zero whatever. I've met some, let's say it's like some lovely women who I would just say, nope, I'm
Mm.
certain they are a nice person.
Okay.
Yeah,
This kind of gets into the intuition sort of thing. I've had this discussion. If we could test this, that'd be great.
but you
And
can't.
there,
And the reason I brought it up is you couldn't test it. You know, you couldn't test. You'd say,
you
what's the
could though.
definition of?
You
Well, I
could
don't know if you could. You couldn't. I don't know if you could test if
because you
someone's
could say,
nice.
well, let's just say that you're gonna trust a person or not trust them. You could be shown a series of pictures or meet people in real life, and let's say 100 people, and some at least one of them or none of them is a serial killer, and you don't know which one. Now, if your thing really works, you should be able to go, that's the one. But if it doesn't, then you'd have no way to tell. And of course this has been done.
Yeah.
Well, can't
Oh,
tell.
I don't know. Yeah,
There's
I was
no
gonna
way
say
to tell. It's just,
I don't know that I could tell.
yeah.
I
When you
wouldn't make
go,
that
yeah,
claim.
I said this one guy that said, I trust my intuition. It's like, well, because it's a zero sum return. If you avoid somebody because you think that they're bad or whatever,
Yeah.
there's no real loss from that, because even if they were good, there's other people. Even if you pass down a job because you felt bad about it, you felt like some sort of creepy feeling. And if it turns out that was a great job, it doesn't matter, there's other jobs. So this sort of intuition that we think is a thing is more about what I call a zero sum outcome, where if you avoid it and it was actually good, it didn't hurt you. If you avoid it and it was bad, then you start to believe, aha, see, if I turn left and I avoid the accident, I go, aha, see, I knew that I should have turned left. But if I turn left and then I get into an accident, well, then what? But
Sure.
our mind remembers the hits and it forgets the misses. So there really isn't this intuition in some sort of predictive sense. We can tell some things about faces. We can, know some things by body language, and all of that's pretty subconscious.
Right.
How well that works would be an interesting study that I'd want to see. But there again lies the key: study, not just I know when someone's good. And that's
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you, man. I mean, let me ask you. Let's say it's either the case, and you obviously you said for years you did study it, right, when you were back when you were a Christian.
yeah.
It's either the case that it's either true, partially true, or not true, right? I mean, everything that's contained within the book. It sounds like, again, from what I kind of gathered from some of your prior videos, you seemed, if I let's say we were to stipulate that it was true, it sounded to me like you still would say, well, even if it all is true, I'm still not convinced because I couldn't test it again. Maybe there was just this, uh, you know, random freak thing that happened to this guy to rise from the dead, and these other people and these other miracles, and you know,
Okay. I see where you're getting at.
I mean, let me ask you that. I mean, I'm kind of curious. Like, am I right in that assumption, or am I
Well,
mistaken?
no, no. If there was the amount of evidence that we have for biological evolution, that that if there was that amount of evidence for the things in the Bible, then I would agree that it was true. But there isn't. There
Well,
isn't,
no. That no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm asking actually a different question.
and it wouldn't if there was the amount of evidence for the age of the Earth being 4.54
Billion.
billion years old. If there was that amount of evidence for this, for the things that the supernatural stuff in the Bible, then I would agree that it was true. But there isn't. There isn't even
Well,
there isn't even one piece of evidence that any supernatural thing is even a thing. And there except for that. Well, but I saw it, but that's nothing. That's nothing. That doesn't count. I need more than that, and we should want more than that. And without the empirical evidence or the test, we should be skeptical of these conclusions.
yeah, I mean, and again, though, my question was a little bit different. I mean, I hear what you're saying on that one. You're kind of saying if this, then I would say it's true. That's
Yeah.
not what I asked you. I asked you, I stipulated this, which I know you don't like, but if I stipulate, and this is
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
philosophical, if I stipulate that it is all true,
Uh-huh.
okay, so we've already arrived at that conclusion hypothetically.
Okay.
If it's all true, you sounded to me like the type of guy who still would say, well, I could come up with why, yeah, that I believe all that stuff happened, but that's still not enough. Because I think you had one of the videos you said, if there was a God, he would know what it would
Oh,
take to convince me. And I was thinking, man, if it was all
okay.
true,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
like,
There's a difference
yeah,
between knowing that something is true
yeah,
and so if it, there was enough evidence, test, whatever, to convince me that it was all true, I would stand by the truth as best as I could. I would fix the damn arguments that are out there. I'd make them work, or I'd make new ones because
yeah,
all the arguments suck. I'd make new ones. I'd show the evidence. I'd present it, and I stand by it as true. But I would not worship that God. I would knowingly go to hell, uh, because I would not break my own ethical system
yeah,
to do otherwise. I would not understand. I don't think I could unless I came to some sort of understanding why God is using an ad ballum and a uh, what's the opposite of ad ballum? Appeal to prosperity. Why he is using these two logical fallacies to try to convince people to believe in it or not. Although, if we had the evidence, then I suppose that wouldn't even be the issue of belief. It'd be an issue of worship, then, in that case. But at any
correct,
rate, I would say, why are you using these two logical fallacies? And I would not. I don't
right,
know if I could find the answer to that. Then hypothetically, I could join the faith. But
right. Yeah, no,
I,
and I think you just said it all right there, man.
I
and,
mean,
and again, that's
there's a lot of yeah. I mean, there's so many if thens for that because
sure,
my
sure.
current ethics would prohibit me from worshiping something or following something that did logical fallacies and or something that was going to send even one person to eternal pain or eternal pleasure, because either one is not appropriate for finite things, especially when
Yeah,
the finite thing is doing, it's not about what I do to other people or animals or whatever. It's about whether or not I like this person. It's
right, right.
like
Well, yeah, I mean,
okay,
one, I'll
so
just say for the record, though, I wouldn't agree of logical fallacies, but
okay, uh,
but nevertheless, I mean that gives me the sense, and I will say I've got just a few more minutes here,
yeah,
Deacon Furman,
I
man.
was gonna say,
Yeah, yeah,
let's take some questions from chat because some people have been asking
sure,
you questions.
yeah, okay,
And then,
sure.
then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So Rational Martin had suggested that the ladies that you trusted, if you would be willing to give them $1,000.
If I would be willing to give, I mean, if yeah, I mean, like there's girls who've I've worked with, who have needed small loans. I mean, obviously, if they said, hey, even if I think they're sweet, if they said, hey, I need this loan, I need you to empty out your 401k. Um, I wouldn't do that. I mean, for a few reasons, but I would try to help them just as I have.
Well, that's
Um,
good. I
yeah.
think that they were trying to get to whether or not, like, just if you trusted somebody that you just met, like, because of your intuition thing,
Um,
like,
yeah, I mean, I guess if let's say I ran into, I mean, maybe this is what they're looking for. If I ran into some random quote unquote sweet, nice lady, which I did see in the comments. They said, well, it's a subjective term. And she just said, hey, and she seemed very sweet and genuine. And she said, hey, I just need $1,000 loan. I'm not going to, I wouldn't
Yeah,
be
it's
able to
kind of
answer you.
random.
It'd be very random, be very random. If somehow, let's say I was talking to her and then she kind of explained some hardship and she said, hey, I live here and this and that. And man, I just said, well, yeah, maybe I could help you out with a small loan, or something like that. I mean, that it would be
Yeah.
possible. Yeah,
Okay.
it would be.
Main Gun 07 asks, how would we tell the difference between a supernatural event and a magic trick?
Uh, just we don't have a ton of time, and that's a good question. I would say first we'd have to define our terms. I don't know if this is the same guy who was asking about the Statue of Liberty disappearing. I saw that David Copperfield or somebody had a David Copperfield thing. I'd say one, we'd have to define what's the definition of magic versus what's the definition of supernatural.
Well, I mean, both we saw the Statue of Liberty vanish. A whole bunch of people saw that happen. So how do we know that was a trick?
Well, I mean,
maybe he really made it disappear.
I wouldn't agree.
It's a one-time event.
Yeah, from the jump, I wouldn't agree. I mean, that'd be like saying we've all seen dinosaurs because we've seen Jurassic Park. I mean, I think everybody knows that you're watching something that's fake. So I just wouldn't equate them.
Okay. So you don't. Maybe you'll cover that in depth in the comment section once this becomes live. Rational Martin. Pretty sure I pronounced his name wrong every time. Doesn't matter. How could any occurrence be tied to or demonstrated to be supernatural? ? I've been asking that question this whole time. I don't know that we got. Listen to the whole thing. I don't know that we got to the answer. But is there a way, or do we kind of have you?
That'd be, again, some of this is obviously kind of philosophical, but if we just say natural means obeys the laws of nature, let's say that. And I'm no physicist, so I'm not even going to try to pretend all that. But a boulder sitting on the ground, gravity's acting upon it. We believe, and there's the atmosphere and blah 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 blah. If that thing, sight unseen, randomly began, levitating and bouncing around the air and just and again, I could even poke holes in this if we want to start getting theoretical. Well, how do you know someone didn't build like a something with a propulsion device in it? I'm just saying we're walking around.
It's something that has to be, again, it's not. I mean, we've been talking about it the whole time, but we've also been.
It defies the laws of nature. I mean, as we understand them. Yeah.
All right. Snuffy Wuffy Kiss wants to know if you'll give him
$1,000. Probably not. Probably not.
Johnny Drive-By was going to get 5% of it.
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to ask that question. But it's possible if I met him in person or if they really needed it, possible, but unlikely.
Let's see. I think that was, I got all the question marks. If not, then screw all you people. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm
kidding. I love all of you. I need you. Without you, I would be nothing. Okay.
Yeah, I'll take a look later this week at the chat, and I'll kind of go back through and maybe if I'm again, I've never done this before. If I'm able to,
and
okay,
Southernman will be taking. Will post in the comments once this video goes live. After like a couple minutes or so, it takes. YouTube will allow comments on the video proper. It doesn't let it like immediately. Like takes a couple minutes for it to.
Sure.
I really need it. What do you really need? Oh, money. Rational Martin, I'll give you $1,000, but you're
what's the collateral? What's the collateral?
Oh, I have things that he'll have to do for me. Hillary, okay, we'll end on this. I think I don't know if we'll be able to do this, and then we'll let you go because you got things to do and whatnot. If everything is designed, presumably by God, then what would be natural? Now, this is. I think I'll elaborate if Hillary would be okay with that. This is kind of the argument, the watchmaker argument, which sucks. But the way that we tell that something isn't natural is because it's different. And so if everything was designed, then how would we differentiate between anything?
Yeah, I mean, literally, you could do a just hours discussion kind of on
Right.
this very topic. So,
It'll be next time, Hillary. We'll cover that.
yeah, right, right. Because
I
we'd have to,
don't promise, but
right,
um,
yeah,
so uh, Southernman has a great radio voice. That's a good ending. That's a good
there we
ending
go.
right there. You have a good radio voice.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, Southernman, for doing this. This was I don't know what this was, but it was a thing we did. Uh, I enjoyed it. I hope you did as well.
Yeah, I did.
I learned a few things. I have I think you might have learned some things. I don't know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yep,
but
I agree. And
is there
yeah,
anything out there that you want to promote, channel
um,
wise, Twitter, whatever?
no, nothing to promote. But yeah, thank you for the time, and for the people who joined. Hopefully, it was you know useful or entertaining, or got you to think. And I appreciate your point of view and your comments. And again, they're not lost on me, and I think skepticism is a good thing. So I at least agree with you on that, and I appreciate that. And ultimately, skipping a million steps. We just kind of disagree philosophically on some things and how to look at things, but logically, I get where you're coming from, and some of the people in the chat. Maybe when I go read the comments, you know, um, fairly
Well,
intelligent guys, so I
I
get the skepticism, but I appreciate it and I appreciate the time, and um, just
well,
think
thank
about what if I was right. That's all.
yeah.
That's
What
what
if
you got to think
yeah
about.
right yeah well
Well, you actually it was pretty interesting. You kind of answered it there, that last comment. I mean,
yeah
you were pretty clear. So
yeah. And it's like
yeah,
well it'd be a
that's a big
thing.
it'd be a big price to pay, but
Yeah, it's
you got to make a choice.
I
So
go with a man of La Mancha to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. All right. Thanks for your
yeah,
time and energy. Thanks everybody that did this thing. Comment on this video once it becomes available to comment, and I'm sure Southernman will interchange text with you, or he might not, and I might just be making that up. I don't know. I'm talking for him now. Remember that if we don't have empirical evidence or repeatable tests and or a logically sound argument, which we didn't get to that, but that's okay, we should definitely stay skeptical of the conclusions, and if nothing else, we can all agree lobsters exist. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. Goodbye.
bye.
I'm gonna end the universe now. I'm gonna click this button. It's gonna end. Oh my god! Here goes the chat.